Welcome, teacher friend. I'm Lori.
And I'm Melissa.
We are two literacy educators in Baltimore. We want the best for all kids, and we know you do too.
Our district recently adopted a new literacy curriculum, which meant a lot of change for everyone. Lori and I can't wait to keep learning about literacy with you today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Melissa and Lori Love Literacy Podcast. We are thrilled to have some really special guests today. We have some parent advocates on, and I think this is going to be an incredible episode for educators to hear, but also any parents out there listening who are wondering what's going on at my child's school. We are going to dive into a little microcosm that is a really, really good example of what's happening everywhere, or in a lot of places, I should say. So Melissa, I know we just met our new friends from MPS. We can't wait to talk with them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think many of our listeners may already know that there's some pretty powerful things happening in Minneapolis thanks to the advocacy that's going on, or there's momentum, I should say. They'll be able to tell us exactly what's happening, but there's some momentum out there. So we're excited to hear about the work that they're doing.
Yeah. Would you all mind introducing yourselves? Just tell us a little bit about yourselves and I guess what brought you to this work of advocacy, I should say. Sarah, would you mind starting?
Sure. My name is Sarah Spafford Freeman. I'm the parent of 3 Minneapolis public school students. And I came into this work after sort of experiencing the roller coaster of our son's dyslexia and dysgraphia diagnosis. He has struggled for years and was on our personal journey, and then invited to advocate more broadly, or encouraged to advocate more broadly by David, and then connected with Kulia and formed the MPS Academics Advocacy Organization. So happy to be here, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask Kulia if you would introduce yourself next.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Kulia Pringle. I am the Midwest and Puerto Rico regional organizer for National Parents Union, also a Bright Beam activist. And I sort of got into this work as a former educator and sort of started doing parent engagement and organizing at the same time. And just sort of seeing the need as a teacher as well as a parent organizer, like there was a need for more parent voices and more organizing and there was a lot of issues, especially for kids that looked like me, that needed to happen. Mm-hmm. So I was forced to make a decision between teaching and organizing.
That's great. And side note, I hope that takes you to Puerto Rico at some point.
And David, welcome to the podcast. We'd love to hear a little bit about your story too.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got older children in the Minneapolis public schools. The literacy thing is interesting. So when my daughter was in, first grade, the teacher kind of pulls us aside and like, hey, your daughter isn't really reading. And, this is something that you guys need to address. So, we bought a phonics curriculum, did the work, it was a hard struggle, taught our, daughter to read, and kind of didn't really think of that whole experience in the broader context of like, this was kind of put on us.
Yeah.
And we ended up transferring, as a part of a district reorganization. We were in a lower poverty school, and we ended up moving into a higher poverty school. And it was interesting, when we moved, the parents that transferred with us are like, oh yeah, this new school really focused on teaching kids to read. So anyway, I've served on a number of, school site councils. I've served on, district committees. And, it's always a question, like, what's going on with, reading? And as a parent and an outsider, you're always kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. We had a large, population of immigrant students, primarily Somali at the school. So a lot of the focus that we did was on, building vocabulary and background knowledge. And then the district tried to bring in a new Morgan Gilligan curriculum. And I kind of got into going back to my daughter, here's some foundational skills that so many of these kids are missing.
Yeah.
So that kind of led into a little bit, bigger advocacy role. Committee work is hard because it's like there's so many moving targets. And that's kind of when Sarah and I connected and said, let's try and make this a little more public push. So that's where we are today.
Yeah. I just need to pause real quick and say it is insane to put that on parents. Like, it just doesn't even make sense to me that we're sending, what are we sending kids to school for if the schools then just say it's on the parents to teach them how to read? Like, that just, sorry, I just had to comment on that because it blows my mind.
Yeah, I think, it's like, the ladder of reading, we have this large percentage of kids that, kind of figure it out. And then we got these kids that don't. And I don't know that we're totally set up to help with a lot of those kids.
Not at all. And I wanted to share that this is not something that is specific to you all, as we all know, but just for listeners out there, I wanted to share a little story that I was at a friend's house this past Sunday, and I met a mom who was talking about her daughter and how she was a struggling reader, how they just had parent-teacher conferences, and the teacher basically shared exactly what you just shared with us, David. Like, the daughter is struggling. The other daughter's teacher shared that she's, middle of the road, but she's not, an active reader that can comprehend easily, that can read the words easily. And the mom was like, well, what do I do? And the answer was, well, just keep reading to her. Just keep reading to her. She'll pick it up. They'll pick it up. And I ran into this mom, and she was in tears at where we were. And it shouldn't have to be that way. It shouldn't have to be that I'm like, give me your information. I'll send you information about what you can do as a parent, because we really, really, really need our schools to be servicing children. And I think that is really where you all are at too. Like, you've probably had a million experiences like the one that I just described, and are at the end of the rope, and really that started your advocacy work. So I'm curious where you all want to start. Do you want to start at the beginning, or do you want to do it like a Tarantino movie and start like this week, and then we can wheel back? Like, because I feel like some really...
Sarah's jumping at the bit for Tarantino style.
And this, this week's superintendent, the vote that occurred last week, around the superintendent, I think is both very Tarantino-esque and a valuable place to start in terms of where we're focused from here, and what accountability could and should look like in these efforts.
I love that. Okay, so let's start right now. Like, what is happening in your district right now? What's happening with advocacy? I know there was a pretty interesting headline this week. So who wants to take it on? I
mean, I can just say a little bit. I mean, I think, one thing is, a superintendent job is a difficult job. You're tasked with a million things. And, you go to any board meeting, and there's going to be, 10 people lined up to tell you what you should be doing, what you should be fixing today.
Yeah.
The district the board had 4 priorities for the district. One of those was literacy. So that was the area that the board felt that the superintendent, had an area of weakness. And the board really did not communicate, beyond one board member, why we voted the way they did. But it was a 5-4 vote. One board member indicated that she was upset with literacy, and she had communication from the community. But the rest were silent as to how they voted. So it's, I think it's a kind of a little bit of a wake-up call for our community that it's kind of putting, I think, literacy front and center a little bit, where I think it needs to be. Academics has always kind of played second fiddle to a lot of areas in the district. We constantly are reshuffling our boundaries, for various reasons. I mean, some reasons are legit based on enrollment and the integration factors. But it's the district, we need to spend some time on the academics in our district.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Sarah.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just want to ground us in the reality in Minneapolis quickly, because I think it reflects a lot of, especially urban K-12 school districts in the
Absolutely.
US. Minneapolis, like a lot of cities, is segregated along clear lines. In Minneapolis, the axis is north-south. Northwest Minneapolis is a community, predominantly a community of color. South Minneapolis is mostly white. The city of Minneapolis is about 70% white, but the school district is nearly 70% kids of color, highlighting the extent of white flight and disenrollment from the district.
And private school enrollment, I'm sure.
And private school enrollment, absolutely. Half of Minneapolis public school students don't read at grade level. Half of Black and American Indian students read 2 or more grade levels behind. The educational debt in Minneapolis was estimated by ProPublica to be 4 grade levels on average between white students and students of color. So we're talking about significant disparities that have existed before the pandemic, before Superintendent Ed Graff was at the helm. And to David's earlier point, that can has been consistently kicked down the road. Minneapolis uses a balanced literacy curriculum prohibited for use in a growing number of states, and interventions that mirror that flawed approach. And we find ourselves kind of at this point in Minneapolis where I think momentum is growing around some simple but significant tools rooted in the science of reading and sort of evidence-based practice. But we've got a superintendent who dismissed all of that as a philosophical debate and has sort of dug in. And so our advocacy, more than a year long, I think culminated in last week's vote on the superintendent's contract renewal. They voted to renew, but our fight continues. And our fight isn't with the superintendent, but candidly, he's in the way of progress right now. So if folks don't want to partner, you try to partner first and collaborate and push. And, when that doesn't work, it becomes a little Tarantino.
That you just answered the exact question I was going to ask, which was like the ultimate goal that you all have is not to necessarily just get rid of this superintendent, right? That's not where you all are trying to get to. It's just like, I think you just said it perfectly of like, he's just kind of in the way of the goal at the moment. And so that was a significant sign of some movement towards progress.
Yeah. Our first conversation with his superintendent was really like, this is a nationwide conversation. Like you could be a leader in this. And really, I mean, I don't think it's too late for that. I mean, there's, we have, significant, federal dollars coming in. I think there's a little wake up call. So I think there's opportunity for Minneapolis to say, hey, you know what? Okay, let's reset here. And, let's dig into this.
Yeah. Kulia, did you want to add? I know you had started to say something.
Yeah, and I was just going to say a lot of the ways that, he's been in the way, not a lot of the ways, but ways that I don't know, it's just like he's stepping over his own foot with some of the things that he's done. Like David said earlier, his main thing when he got renewed this last time was literacy. Like that was one of the things. And up until now, we don't have a literacy plan. They put together a literacy framework and was going to call that a plan. So it was a plan to get a plan and was going to vote on it. And, just hope that it was just going to fly by the seat. And then that was it. That was one mishap. And then it was, our state, Minnesota Department of Education says that if over 28% of your readers need reading interventions, you have a core curriculum problem. So we asked the district, how many
100
students, right? So they're not keeping track of that. It's in the spreadsheet at each individual school. So that's another obstacle. It's like, why wouldn't you get the data to find out if you have a core curriculum problem? The other issue is they just hired, under the superintendent's tenure, they had an interim academic senior officer for 2-3 years and just hired her 2 months ago. And then so now she's coming in with this new whatever it is. And it's like, oh, well, I can't say whether or not our curriculum or our professional development isn't working because I don't have the data to show that. So now I'm saying that everybody needs to do it. And then I'll, find out if benchmark and press isn't working. So again, it's like he's, you know what I mean? Like he's standing in the way of progress by these few things that could have been happened and hasn't happened with the literacy plan and, how many students are receiving interventions and then the senior academic officer. So it's like, something needs to happen.
Especially if you're putting literacy as a priority, right?
Yeah.
If you're naming that, yeah.
I mean, one thing to add to that is, we did not have a literacy curriculum prior to his being here. Mm. And then now half the teachers weren't even using the curriculum that we had. So we buy a $10 million curriculum. Half the teachers aren't even using it. So now here we are 3 or 4 years later, and it's like, okay, now we need to implement this. Then we need to see if it works.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when it's this long road.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges has been that when we're not identifying the same problems, right? Like we have repeatedly highlighted the literacy curriculum as a challenge. My youngest, especially because of distance learning, I got to see the curriculum for my dyslexic son and, my kindergartner last year up close and in practice. And when we've tried to identify or just ask, is the curriculum a problem? The response has been, well, we haven't even fully implemented it yet. So we can't identify that as a problem.
Wait, after 4 years?
After 4 years.
But they haven't fully impleted it yet, Lori.
Yeah. What does that even mean? That's interesting. I mean,
like you would walk into, people would walk into classrooms and the saran wrap is still on these things.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask, what curriculum? Do you mind if I ask? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah. Oh, we'll say benchmark. Yeah, benchmark advanced.
Yeah,
which is balanced literacy.
And I was told by the senior literacy. Yeah, I was told by the senior academic officer that she was making a joke, as not a joke, but she was trying to say like how bad it was. But she was saying that teachers were literally just using their neighbor's lesson plan like it was a free for all and everybody was doing what they wanted to do. But now, half the Title I schools are being trained on benchmark. Next year, the other half will be trained. And then,
then we can assess if it's working or not.
Is it like the train has left the station and they're, I guess I'm just wondering, like I feel like after 4 years of not seeing progress, you would press pause, right? And also if literacy is an initiative, is it like the train has left the station and it's too far gone, or we spent all this money?
I think it's the sunk cost. Yeah. They spent the money, having failed to implement it in 4 years seems like malpractice from, where I'm sitting as a parent, but now they want more time. And I think a theme in all of these conversations, especially when you're pushing for a district that's majority kids of color, like when white gatekeepers are saying we need more time, that should be a red flag for every advocate and ally out there that things aren't good. And our district keeps, whether it's in renewing Superintendent Graff's contract, when to Kulia's point, we've never had a literacy plan under his tenure, or whether saying 4 years into a new curriculum, we just need more time to implement it fully before we can assess its efficacy in classrooms. It's all it's all bullshit that should raise a red flag when more time is the prescription being offered to these issues.
And there is no way on God's green earth if 73% of the district's children were white.
We would not, yeah.
It would be okay to have more time and more time and more time for kids to continue to fail.
Yeah, Kareem Weaver, who is...
We're familiar, yeah. But frame it for people who are listening who are not familiar.
Yeah, Oakland NAACP activist who's taken on, advocating for literacy. He had a good point about curriculum. We kind of really turned to his work because he's really thoughtful person who's kind of figured this out. But he just tweeted the other day, in terms of like curriculum selection, and this is a big problem with ours, is that, he said, find programs with verifiable results for students that match yours. And then 2, find which can be fully implemented within the teacher's contract. The curriculum we have is, very difficult to use. It's too much. And there's a massive, and you're seeing that. That's why you're getting a lot of the pushback. It's too hard to implement, and it's not being implemented.
Yeah, I actually just looked it up too on Ed Reports. Melissa, were you doing that too?
Yep.
I could see you. I was like, I know what she's doing. And the big weakness in the curriculum that I just very quickly noted while you were talking is building knowledge, which is a critical component, especially for students who are not having experiences outside of school or who may not be having, I don't want to make an assumption, but who may not be having experiences outside of school. Regardless, though, we know it's what's good for all students. This is what reminds me of dyslexia so much, right? We know those decoding skills are necessary for all students, but they really are necessary for students with dyslexia. But also, on the other end of the spectrum, building knowledge is good for all students, but it's especially good for students who are not getting those experiences outside of the classroom. So there's just so many parallels, and we're choosing a curriculum for, in an environment that seems like they may need a little bit something different. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to disagree.
Yeah.
I was wondering about, I'm assuming you all think even if we needed to have 4 more years to implement this curriculum, do you all think this is the right one?
No,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not a curriculum expert, but
No.
Can you elaborate for our audience about why this is not what you would want and what you would want to see instead?
Go to this, go to the Facebook group, The Science of Reading, What I Have Learned in College, and type in benchmark advanced and look at what the teachers say about it.
Yeah.
Don't take my word as a parent. Take the word of the teachers who are trying to use it.
100%.
Yeah. Or take my word as a parent.
Take Sarah's word as a parent.
I've watched this curriculum. Our son, who's now in 4th grade, was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia in 2nd grade. And I watched him fake his way through kindergarten and 1st grade because of the presence of pictures and the focus put on 3 cueing and repetitive texts rather than decodable texts. Mm-hmm. And I knew that whole time that he couldn't read. He couldn't spell, he couldn't write, he couldn't read, and was asking questions and pushing and, being told he's just a boy, he's right where he should be, he's fine. And then in 2nd grade, we were lucky that he had a teacher, a really experienced teacher who understood the role of phonics and phonemic awareness and recognized in Jack that he was dyslexic. And he did a full assessment in 2nd grade where it wasn't just letter sounds and letter names and sight words that he could sort of memorize, even though he didn't know. And the wheels came off, and all of a sudden he was in the 6th percentile, and the school was saying, go have him assessed for dyslexia. When he was diagnosed, the only prescription we were given was to find a tutor trained in the science of reading And, maybe in Orton Gillingham, we were given specific sort of training and curricula and models to look for. And I watched this story repeat itself with our youngest, who was a kindergartner last year, had school almost entirely online, struggled to form those foundational skills. And we were wondering, is she also dyslexic? But separating the signal from the noise with a shitty curriculum that doesn't focus on these foundational skills is tough. My two youngest are now at a school this year in Minneapolis, a new school, and it's a partner school with a local private school called Groves Academy that's a leader in curricula and instruction and training around literacy. And so at her parent-teacher conference Tuesday, I got her typical district assessment, which showed her in the red zone in the 17th percentile, which would have flashed red lights had it been the only information I was given. But luckily, because of the Groves partnership at their new school, she was also given a simpler assessment that was able to identify that she struggles with 3 specific digraphs, but otherwise is right where she should be. Mm-hmm. And that information was so simple and yet revolutionary to have. It was the first parent-teacher conference I left in 7 years of doing them, where I had truly actionable information for my kid. Yeah. And importantly, so did her teacher.
Yep.
And that's just so critical and so lacking at most schools in the district. We have these little pilot programs, but more broadly, parents going to conferences this week are just getting those fast test scores.
And I just want to
go ahead, Kalia.
I was just going to say, I just want to add, Sarah, is she's a parent that's knowledgeable. She's a parent that, knows these, things and resources that she can give to her child, and then has the resources to give her kids these.
Yeah.
Now you take this for the masses amount of parents in her school, because Sarah is now in a school where majority of the kids are Black. It is a bottom 5% school in the state of Minnesota. It is a low performing school. And you say, some of the parents of the kids that where Sarah's kid goes to may not have graduated from high school, right, may not have been given the foundation of reading, don't know what to recognize and what not to recognize. They're putting their kids into the hands of this system that, they're assuming is going to teach their kid how to read. And then if they don't, then, they're going to let them know there's something wrong. Like that's, Sarah's story is not like the norm. You know what I mean? Like majority of the parents that look like me are not aware of anything. And so the cycle just continues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the cultural capital required to advocate for your kids in this environment,
I know,
is outrageous. And to Kulia's point, like I left Ingrid, my daughter's conference reassured, but frustrated and sad at the same time, because so many conferences didn't go like that. So many parents, to Kulia's point, weren't leaving with information that they could use to advocate for their kid or even understand where their kid is at. And so it's incumbent upon schools to be able to do this shit so that parents don't have to have, graduate degrees to understand what's going on with their kid and advocate for them.
Right. Or money to pay for tutors.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, even in Baltimore here, when I was at the district level, was advocating for better assessments for teachers, because even as a teacher, I would get, well, here's your kids who are 1 grade level below. Here are the ones that are 2 or 3. Here are the ones that are 4 and 5. And I'm like, well, that doesn't do any, like, doesn't tell a teacher anything.
Yeah.
Right. Where are they struggling? Are they struggling? Where are their gaps? Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of those there's an admiring the problem
Yes.
that crops up, and, tools exist to help us around that corner, right? To actually, assessing students in a way that helps parents, helps teachers, right? Those tools exist. They're just not broadly adopted. Yeah. And in Minneapolis, there's, from the superintendent's office, at least, there's a real resistance to them, even as we pilot them in a few buildings.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, and I can't remember who mentioned it, was keeping students. I think it might've been you, Sarah. It was amidst all of these adult things happening, right? Keeping students at the center and doing what's best for kids and for children always. And there's an urgency in that. But your story resonates so deeply with me as well, because in my child's district, they just adopted Lucy Calkins this past year. And to me, it was just like a shot through the heart. I'm like, there's like, Kulia, I'm looking at your quote from the 74 article. And you're like, they have major millions of dollars. They need to get a literacy plan that's based on the science of reading. They need to get a literacy curriculum that's based on the science of reading. And so I think when you said students at the center, what that says to me is like, my kid's district just adopted this too. I feel exactly what you're feeling. And the same kind of issues are, arising here. Like some of the teachers who I know were telling me, like the literacy director wears a shirt that's like, I love Lucy. And I'm just like, this is not about adults and like who we like or what we think is best. We should be heading to science and thinking, what is science telling us about what's best for kids? And sometimes that might mean setting aside our own personal beliefs and being willing and open to try something new. And just like science is always changing and growing, but there are some core beliefs that we know and we've learned that are true, and we can only grow to make them better. So like, I'm curious about what you've done to, if you could share a little bit about what you've all done to advocate so far, because I feel like you're very active. You have a beautiful website that is such a great resource for parents. So say there's a parent or a teacher in a situation that I just described. What could we do? That's really big.
Yeah.
You're like everything.
We're not, I don't think we're at like helping parents. That's not what we're trying. I mean, I think, we're trying to advocate for broader changes to the system.
Yeah.
So if like a parent said, hey, my kids just, I don't have like a list of tutors I can hand out. Is that what you're asking, or what are you?
No, I think I'm thinking like, what did you do in your advocacy journey? Like, what have you all done that you felt like has really helped put some boots on the ground in your space? Sorry for that clarification.
Yeah. I mean, I think just, I think the whole thing is trying to create boots on the ground, to your point. And I've used that kind of analogy before, because it just, there's so, we are a performative city. Like, someone found some books in a dumpster, and, like the whole city gets worked up. A school was cleaning out at the end of the year. They threw out some old books, and like the whole city gets worked up about this, where we have this huge reading gap. And, it's like, like literacy is a very complex subject, and we need to, I think, educate people around this and make them comfortable saying, all right, this is a space I can advocate in, or I can push on, or I can ask my school board member, like, what are we doing about this?
Yeah.
Or personally, like, I felt like I'm not an expert in the classroom, and I would say I'm still not an expert in the classroom, and I feel uncomfortable in this space. So I think it's trying to get people comfortable enough to start asking questions and pushing the district to make this a priority, make space for this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also, the work we've done to center student outcomes and experiences. To your earlier point, Lori, about the tendency to put the feelings of adults before the outcomes of students is really, that happens a lot, right? And I think one of the things we've done is try to center ground folks in the reality of our district. A lot of people just aren't aware of how broad and deep these issues are. Inform them about the national conversation and trends and themes, happening in other districts and states, but then also empower them to have sort of a path to follow, to advocate both in their child's school, but at the district more broadly. Coolia has helped parents write letters to the editor. Coolia has, handed out information and ensured that parents have access to both the information, but also the actions they can take to push for better. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's a model to follow in what we're doing. And we're just following the model of people like Kareem Weber and the Oakland NAACP and Fulcrum and, Memphis Lift and Nashville Propel. Like there are so many, I think, Black parent organizers out there doing really good work that is providing a model for parents and people in other cities and districts to follow.
Mm-hmm. And I would just say all three of us have different advocacy styles and how we approach the district. And so I think that helps, sometimes we do good guy, bad guy.
We do a lot of that. And we'll let you guess. We'll let Melissa and Lori guess.
Sarah and David,
I'm not going there.
Sarah and David would write a nice letter, hi, we'd like to get this. And I'll say, hey, I'll show up with 20 parents at your door. Yeah. Give me what we need, meet with me now. You know what I mean? So we, having different advocacy styles so you can come at different ways. So it's not just one way that you're doing helps.
Yes. How do you want your salsa? Mild, medium, or hot?
I was actually thinking of saying it like a multifaceted approach, but I like yours better.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the importance of having a broad coalition, right? Like we could not have gotten to a 5-4 vote on whether to renew the superintendent's contract if there wasn't pressure coming from a lot of directions and constituencies. Yeah. And I think that's, go collaborate in an intentionally inclusive way, and you will marvel at the mountains you can push in the right direction.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because Lori wrote a letter, right? But they're just able to be like, yeah, that's just one parent. Yeah. Exactly.
They did actually respond, but it didn't matter. I mean, they basically were like, yes, we know about all this research and we chose this anyway. Thank you so much for your inquiry. Right. I'm like, it's disheartening. And it feels like you're alone, it feels like you're alone in this journey.
And that was
what was your email, Coolia?
From the teacher?
Yeah. Try that.
Oh. Well, she saw I think one of the articles that was, that you all saw. Mm-hmm. And she wrote, this is from a teacher. I wish I would have met all the Minneapolis Science of Reading Literacy for All activists before we left Minneapolis. I quit my job with the district and withdrew my 3 boys, feeling frustrated, alone in this fight. You, Sarah, and David have been such an inspiration. Thank you all for your work. So who knows how many teachers like her have left in frustrating, trying to advocate by themselves on the inside for science of reading.
Well, and MPS's own data show, white flight from the district has been an issue, but it's Black families leaving the district that's the bigger issue. And MPS's own data show that 80% of those Black families who've left MPS cited academics as the number one reason they left.
Yeah.
So Black parents have been saying this shit for a long time. And I want to name that we're finally getting attention when white parents have joined the mix. Like that's a blessing and a curse of this work and this group. And I want to name that explicitly. But like Black parents have been saying this for a long time and just leaving the district for something better because, you know, MPS and lots of districts won't move or listen when it's Black families advocating for their Black kids.
And I would add our immigrant families are leaving too. We've lost about a third of our immigrant families in the last, 5 or 6 years.
And a lot of our community weren't able to say, like, you know, using the term, the science of reading, we just knew our kids weren't learning how to read and our teachers weren't listening and we weren't getting the help. So we just went to other districts or to a charter school or homeschooled or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then I think you all brought up too, like, you know, it's raining money on K-12 right now. Yeah. And Sarah, can you talk about how much Minneapolis Public Schools is going to put in literacy on how much money that we're receiving?
Yeah.
Do we even want to know?
Yeah. So we did the math. MPS, like a lot of districts, had a board meeting last month where the district proposed and the board approved a plan to spend its ESSER III dollars. MPS is getting more than $160 million in ESSER III funds, and they are going to spend 1% of it on literacy-specific tools, efforts, initiatives. 1% Sorry.
On their priority.
It's fine. We're checking the explicit box.
And it's one of their
still a priority
stated priorities, where the superintendent's own evaluation graded him as developing, which is just a nice way of saying like you haven't fucking done this yet. And so 1% of dollars is going to be spent on literacy in a district where half of kids don't read at grade level, and within that 1%. A third of those dollars are to pilot the Groves Academy partner program at 3 of the whitest schools in the district, in a district that's majority kids of color. And so, it doesn't reflect stated academic goals or stated equity and inclusivity values, right? And I think, we've seen other districts approach these federal dollars in a very different manner. The state legislature, in related news, the state legislature in Minnesota in June passed a bill providing $3 million in grant money for letters training. Mm-hmm. MPS is not going to pursue those grants, nor are they going to spend $1 on professional development rooted in the science of reading for MPS teachers. They are doing some vendor training, which is a very different thing than PD, right? So it's just one of many ways where what MPS says and what they do are divergent.
I don't even have words.
We have lots of words. Kulia has some great graphics and memes we're sharing. But yeah,
I want to see those.
The simple, what we think are non-controversial steps that could be taken by a district with the reality MPS bases aren't being taken. And I think that's, the frustration, and it begins at the top. And going back to what Lori said about, adult feelings being centered, our advocacy has prompted board members to yell at us, board members to say they're going to delete future emails from us. teachers to feel criticized and sensitive. I woke up this morning to an email from a teacher who felt, criticized and called out by a post I had praising the Groves partnership. And so these adult feelings are being centered once again while they ignore the content of all of our advocacy and asks.
We had dyslexia. There's a new law in the state of Minnesota requiring schools to screen students for the characteristics of dyslexia, grades K-3. And so that's being now reported to the state. We still have questions about how MPS kind of did this, but they flagged 42% of
That's what I read.
Third graders.
Yes, I read that.
And that's not
42%.
been, so we had to request this data. We had another parent from our community, our advocacy community, go to the state to request this. The district did not share this with us after, a data request. But this should be part of our conversation to have, you flagged 42% of your kids for basically dyslexia. I mean, that's...
And you only tested, you said K through 3.
Correct.
Right. So that's almost half of students in primary grades.
Kindergarten was half, was 50%.
Well, and it goes back to what I was saying, about my kids' parent-teacher conference, not to bring it back to me, but like separating
I think, Sarah, these stories are important. Yeah, the stories are important because it shows what we're talking about. So yeah.
And I think, my daughter's FAST assessment, which is, we don't know what tool the district, used to measure or to capture this 42%, but I suspect it was probably FAST. Was it FAST? Okay. Yeah. So my daughter's FAST score identified her as having characteristics of dyslexia, right? She's in the red zone. She's in the 17th percentile.
Sure.
But her Groves assessment, performed by the teacher and not timed, there's downsides of all these assessments. The Groves assessment clearly identified for us that she doesn't know SH, CH, and TH. And other than that, she's right where she should be. And that signal versus those noise is critically important, right? And it should, ideally, these assessments should all be informing and guiding instruction in the classroom. Her Groves assessment did that. The teacher knows which digraphs her students are struggling on. The FAST assessment just indicate, is a blinking red light, but it tells you nothing.
Yeah. It's like what's actionable versus what is just like waving a red flag around, these are really tangible, actionable next steps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we overtest these kids too, right? So like, oh my God, can we eliminate half these assessments, especially in the early years, by more effectively distinguishing which ones give us actionable information and which don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of this reminds me of, I keep coming back to this. We talked to a few people from Unbound Ed, and they kindly asked me to not use the term struggling readers because it puts it on the students, right? It puts it on them. Like there's something wrong with the students, but in fact, it's students who didn't receive the proper reading instruction. And this just keeps reminding me of that, right? It's like 42% of your students do not have characteristics of dyslexia, right? They're not receiving the instruction that they need.
Yeah. Right. And you have to be able to say that without teachers being triggered by it.
Right.
In order to affect it positively. Right.
Correct.
And, it's that, and we've talked to, I want to just say that we have talked to dozens of, many, many teachers who have approached these conversations with humility and insight and have been the ones identifying these deficiencies in both training, curricula, et cetera.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of teachers fighting the good fight. But we tried to get our local teachers union, to put out a statement in support of letters training. And it was voted down by the executive board. And we've tried other ways to sort of push through the uncomfortable feelings adults get in these conversations, but it comes back to that too often.
Yeah. Melissa and I are very honest on this podcast. Like, I am between undergrad, master's, and my post-master's leadership certificate. I received no science of reading training. And my master's was in reading. Reading.
Yeah.
And then as a teacher, you can see that, right? Like I have all this training that I think is what it's supposed to be, right? Why would I think otherwise? Or would I question it? And then I'm given a curriculum that I'm told is what's supposed to happen. Why would I question that? So you can see why they get there, but you're right. I mean, it's still, we have to.
And then it just sort of, like you said, puts the, for a family or a parent, they put their kids into this building, like I said, that's fully, that's everybody's getting paid. All these professionals, all these people went to school, they should know all these things. And then when their kid comes home and can't read, it's, oh, well, your kid is a struggling reader. Oh, well, maybe you're, poverty and single parent home and
read to them more.
Yeah. All these other things come up and it's just like, wow, I've had a different experience in school where I always thought there, Minnesota and other systems or education systems that I've been through didn't have an issue because I was one of those readers and my daughter was too, that didn't struggle. We were going to get it regardless. So in my head, I was like, oh yeah, I got taught how to read and I had to learn. No, you taught yourself how to read. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But just, I get frustrated when I hear it's just easier, it seems like, in this system to take the responsibility off of the people that has the education and all of the things in order to make it happen. It goes back to the person that, doesn't have that experience. I always tell parents, like, all you can do at home is read to your kid. Like, if you
shouldn't be asked to do more than that.
Right. It's like, if you don't know the science of reading, like, how would you know how to teach your kid how to read?
Right.
Well, and there's such a tendency, to Kulia's point, when these instructional deficits are demonstrated by kids or reflected by kids, there's a tendency in districts like Minneapolis to blame poverty and blame parents.
Yeah.
And I think of our experience as an exception because they had to believe me that my son was struggling, and they couldn't blame it on poverty or perceived parental deficits, right? They didn't have those scapegoats to go to. And so my experience with teachers, principals, the district, I know has been different than lots of parents who tried to do this, fight the same fight. And that, like, those undertones and influences can't be overstated. It can't be overstated.
The typical path for someone like Sarah is you just pull your kid out.
Right.
And, and then you complain at the cocktail party. Oh, now we're at this private school because my kid couldn't read.
Right.
And we have dozens of testimonials like this. These, affluent parents have just basically given up, pulled their kids out, and they're finding, places that are going to focus on the giving the kids the tools they need. And for kids that don't have the wealth or the advantages, they're in a different place. And that's what we have to advocate for. Yeah, they don't have a choice. And culturally, a lot of the immigrant communities come from, countries where, we just had a another podcast, one of the Latina parents, like, your kid doesn't get promoted if they're not at second grade, they're not going to get promoted to third grade. And, culturally in the US, we just keep promoting kids. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of cultural differences that we have to address as well.
That's a really good point. Yeah. One of the things I feel like, I just think it's important to name that, like, this comes out in different ways. Like, as you were speaking, I feel like sometimes parents say things like, instead of saying, this isn't the science of reading, they'll say something's not right. I can just tell something's not right with my child. Something's not right with school, but it may not come out in terms of like eloquently saying this is a struggle with science-based or evidence-based or structured literacy practices. And it shouldn't have to.
Yeah. I mean, we shouldn't be expected to know that.
Right. Like Kulia said, read to your kids. That's what parents should do.
And then even when you say it, even when you have that language and access it, then you're told, but you're not an educator, you're a parent, like, stay in your lane.
That's a good point.
It's like there's apparently no good way to advocate for better student reading outcomes. And that's another just standard issue practice of white gatekeepers and positions of power, right? Like, that's textbook.
It's so funny, Sarah. I always remember, like, as a teacher, I feel like too, like, we were told that, like, even if we complained as teachers, they're not really going to listen to us. But if parents complain, then they'll listen.
Yeah, they won't. They'll tell you you're not teachers. Funny. You're not a teacher.
That makes so much sense. It's really just like, we're not listening to any of you. We're just making
that's the reality.
Cycle.
Yeah. We had a good interview with Sherry Lucas Hall, and she, really insightful as a teacher and an educator who's now a tutor. And she's been doing the letters training, and she's just like, this is something that every teacher needs. 100%. We need to open our eyes to the, she goes back and reflects on the children that she's, failed to serve. And she's like, we need to do better for these kids.
Yeah. I just did letters last year, 20 years into my career. Yeah. And it was the most I learned about how to teach reading.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so struck by the teachable moment too many educators are avoiding. Mm-hmm. And I'm really, and again, before I get the hate mail from teachers, lots of teachers are, thank you, we appreciate you, we see you. But like, our superintendent, who was an elementary teacher before going into administration, has just denied that there's a teachable moment here. Yeah. And in doing so, sort of minimized 30 years of growing evidence, right, of certain practices' efficacy. And it just, I guess I marvel at a bunch of educators avoiding a teachable moment. I can't not name that.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity to be had. And I think really the students are the ones who are missing out. And so we have to do this work because our kids need us. So I think on that note, I just want to say thank you to you all. And I also would love to ask you we always ask our guests to leave listeners with a piece of advice. So whoever would like to go first, sharing with our listener base who are educators, from teachers all the way up through school district leaders. We'd love to ask you and invite you to leave a piece of advice for our friends listening.
Mine is simple. This is Kulia Pringle. There's no such thing as other people's children. And I'll end with that.
Well, fuck, I can't follow that. Dang it, Kulia, you have to go last.
Kulia, you're gonna say it again at the end. How about that? You wrap us. You wrap us. Yeah. We'll come right back to you.
Yeah. Trust trust your instinct. To the parents.
Yeah.
Just trust your instincts. You know, I knew something was up with my son when he was 3 and couldn't form words yet.
Yeah.
And it took me until he was almost 9 to have a name and a story for it.
Mm-hmm.
But trust your instincts.
And teachers too, Sarah. I know you said parents, but like teachers feel that too. I mean, I remember being in the classroom being like, this
doesn't feel
something's right with this.
Yeah.
Like, how can I help this kid more? And I didn't have the tools, but I knew something was off. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I reflect on, a testimonial that I received from a teacher about, a student who was acting out in the classroom, at the lowest level. And she just received, maybe a couple weeks of, Orton Gillingham instruction, and it changed her life. The teacher this is like a literacy specialist, went back the following year, and this girl had just completely blossomed.
Yeah.
And I guess my work is trying to find these kids that have so much potential, and that we're not letting them blossom.
Absolutely.
And so for me, again, there is no such thing as other people's children. Para los niños, para todos los niños, for all the kids.
I love it. Thank you all so much. You are doing amazing, amazing work. I know that maybe it doesn't feel that way when you're getting those emails from people, or people aren't listening, but
I guess if parents out there, the advice is like, you've got to, districts and superintendent boards have a million, issues going on, and you've got to build a constituency that's going to advocate on this topic, because there's something new every day, and there's something new on the superintendent's plate every day that can feel like a higher priority than addressing the fact that we have so many kids that are struggling to read in our city.
And it's difficult to have these conversations. Like, I feel like talking about this is akin to saying something like cancer or divorce, or, I mean, it's really, really hard. These are hard. This, at least to me, is a hard topic that gets lumped into big societal topics. But the difference is that this is one that's like hiding in plain sight. But it's invisible, right? It's not as visible as all of the other big things happening, but we know it's all around us. And so I feel like this really important conversation that we had today, that you all are continuing to have with your school district, is just very sobering. So thank you for having it with us. We really are just so grateful.
Thank you, Laurie and Melissa.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening, literacy lovers. Be sure to visit our website to subscribe to our newsletter and podcast. It's literacypodcast.com.
Yep. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Most of them are at Literacy Podcast.
Yes. And please reach out to us. Melissa, what's our email address?
Melissa and Lori at literacypodcast.com is our email address. And we love getting emails from you all. And Lori and I
really read them.
Yeah,
we really respond.
It's fun. We love when you all reach out, and we get to have conversations with you. So please email us.
Let us know what you're thinking, what you're thinking about literacy, what you're thinking about
ideas for us to podcast about.
Yes, ideas for podcasting, anything. We love to hear from you, what you liked, what you want.
Yeah,
we're here for you.
Mostly y'all are asking questions, which is great.
Yes.
We don't mind that either.
Yes. We're so glad you're here to learn with us.
Thank you, everybody.